week's story comes from the Old Testament. We are still in the book of Genesis, but this time we're in the desert. And we know that the desert is a very hard place to live. That having a piece of it here in our church, it helps us to tell the stories that happened in the desert. When the sun beats down during the daytime, it's very hot. You can't even walk on the sand. And at night, it can feel so cold that you need blankets to keep you warm. And there's not a lot of water in the desert. It's very dry. And so it's very hard for anything to grow in the desert. Abram and Sarai lived in a beautiful city in the desert called Haran. And the one true God loved them. And once he said to them, "Move from your home. I will give you a new place to live and a new land. It's all right to go, because I will be with you, and I will bless you, and you will be a blessing." Well, Abram and Sarai, they had friends and family in Haran. It was a little scary for them to go and to leave. Would they be okay? Would God be with them? They trusted God, and they left. They journeyed out through the desert, and they came to Shechem, to a place in the desert. Would God be with them here? God was with them in Haran. Would God be with them in Shechem? And God spoke to them. And God said, look at all this land. I will give you and your children this land. Well, Abram and Sarai were so happy. They were so happy that they built an altar. They built a spot to remember God, a place where they could go and give their thanks and praise to the one true God. And then they left, and they carried on through the desert, and they came to a town named Bethel. Would God be with them here? God was with them in Haran. God was with them in Shechem, but would God be with them here as well? And God was. God was with them. And they built an altar. They built a spot to go to so that they could remember God and talk to God and give praise to God. But soon there was a famine, a great famine, a time where there wasn't enough food for the animals and the people. And so Abram and Sarai needed to leave, and they journeyed on to a new land. They journeyed on to Egypt. Now, this was a different place. This was a strange place. This had different people and different customs. And Abram, he was frightened. And he forgot. He forgot God's promise. But God did not forget about Abram. and the Egyptian people, they took care of them. They took care of the animals. They made sure they all had enough food and safety. God was with them in Egypt. And soon they moved back to the land of Canaan, to a place called Hebron. Would God be with them here? God had been with them in Haran. He had been with them in Shechem. He had been with them in Bethel. He had been with them in Egypt. Would God be with them here? And then God spoke to them. And God said, I will give you many children to live in this land. Abram and Sarai were so happy. They were so happy to know that God was with them. They built an altar. They built a special spot where they could go and they could give their thanks and they could talk with God. For the one true God had been with them. He had been with them in Haran. He had been with them in Shechem. He had been with them in Bethel. He had been with them in Egypt, and he was with them in Hebron, just as God had promised. I wonder what it was like to be on a journey like that, not knowing where you were going to go or what you were going to find. I wonder if you have ever been on a journey like that. I wonder if you have an altar, a place where you can go and pray and give your thanks and spend time with God.